Welcome to this week's edition of Black Authors Matter TV, where we interview the latest movers and shakers in the African American literary community. You'll meet some old friends, discover new ones, and stay abreast of the latest book developments around the country and even the world. So sit back and relax for the next 2 hours with Black Authors Matter TV co-hosts Gwen Richardson and Dr. Rhonda Lawson.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Black Authors Matter TV. It's April 16th and welcome back to the show. I'm Gwen Richardson, your host for tonight, along with my co-host,
Dr. Rhonda Lawson. Good evening, everyone.
And we are going to have an amazing show again tonight. I have a couple of quick announcements before we bring on our first guest. And our first two guests, it's an interesting dynamic, and I'll explain that in 1 minute. But our Black Authors Matter TV Awards finalist voting started yesterday, so you all can vote for the winners in 14 categories. We've already had almost 500 votes cast in just 24 hours. So people are really voting. And so if you really feel led and committed to your favorite person who's an author or in the book industry, vote for them. And you can vote every day, or you can only vote once a day from a particular IP. But if you have different devices, you have different IP addresses, so you can vote differently on those. So also, the voting for that ends April 29th, and the awards show is May 14th. So that's always an exciting night for the awards. Our National Black Book Festival registrations for vendors is open, and it's 72%. So if you want to sign up, please do so. Don't hesitate. And then our Black Authors Matter Children's Book Awards process is ongoing and ends June 3rd. Now, our first guest was in the waiting room, and then she logged off. I hope she didn't think her time. I'm hoping she just switched devices.
Computer problems.
There she is. Okay, there she is. So she's back, and I wanted to explain the interesting dynamic with the first two guests. Piper Huguley has a brand new book out called American Daughters, and it's about Teddy Roosevelt. It's a Franklin D. Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt's daughter, and I had this already read and thought out in my mind. Oh, Booker T. Washington's daughter. So, interesting story. And our second guest, who'll be on right after Piper, this was really just serendipity. It was just a coincidence. But his book is called The American Daughters. It's a completely different story, but the title's the same, except for the word "the." And that's what we talk about often on this show, that titles cannot be copyrighted. You can have 100 books with the same title, 100 different books. And so sometimes it happens. I don't know if they even know. I'm going to ask Piper if she knows. And because I just thought that was really interesting. And really, the fact that they're on the same night was purely coincidental. So Piper, welcome back to Black Authors Matter TV.
Do I need earphones?
No, now I hear you.
No,
I didn't hear you.
we hear you. At first, we didn't hear you.
I was muted. That's what.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so
that
explains.
makes it easier to unmute.
It is so funny though that this serendipitous moment.
Yeah.
It kind of reminded me of I can't think of her last name. Her first name is Tommy. She wrote Children of Blood and Bone.
Oh yes, the whole Nora Roberts thing.
Yes. So y'all didn't talk bad about each other on social media first.
No, and that whole thing, the way, to bless her heart, that went down. Titles aren't copyrighted.
Right.
So, and I'm, compared to Maurice, I'm just a little mid-list paperback person. this little book was not in the New York Times, and I was not on the cover of Publishers Weekly or anything like that. So when I signed the contract, those people, they name it whatever they name it. That's not what I called it.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
That wasn't what I called it, but that's what they called it. And you know,
Okay.
when I went to them and told them, I knew about his book coming out, and I told them about it, and they was like, so
It's already done. We already did it. It's already done.
There you go. I mean, but we're not about to waste all this money. We don't put money in this. It's just gonna be what it's gonna be.
that's how it was. That's how it was. So yeah, I just, you know, I could be sitting around, everybody's like saying, but I said, hey, whatever it is, it is. So
Yeah, well, you know, you all ended up being on the same night and back to back purely coincidentally. It wasn't planned at all. Maurice was booked for another night and he had to cancel. And so when he rebooked, the time and day he picked happened to be the one right after you. And I think you were already booked. So, well, wow, this is
yeah, I'm not no New Orleans legend like him. I've only been down there twice. I think we have some people in common that we know, but we went to a coffee shop down near New Orleans, and there's like a little plaque at the coffee shop above the place where he wrote this book.
Oh wow.
oh.
Yeah, I can't remember which one of his books was, but they put a little plaque there, and the little plaque
That was
said,
in New Orleans?
yes, it said,
Okay, see, I'm from New Orleans. I did not know that, but I'm going to be in New Orleans this weekend, so I'm gonna go look for that plaque.
yeah, it said Maurice Ruffin wrote that here. I was like,
Was it at Cafe Du Monde?
no. This was a very small coffee shop on one of the little back streets.
PJ's.
Yeah, maybe I can't remember the name of it.
Okay.
But Sarah Roshan, who is New Orleans author as well, whatever, we were walking around, we just popped in this little coffee shop. I thought, ooh, he must be a big deal to have like somebody put a little plaque up.
Well, you know, I'll tell you this. I was living in Belgium for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go to downtown Brussels,
Mm-hmm.
there is a plaque of because there was this author, and I cannot think of his name because I'm having a brain fart right now, but there's a plaque of this American author who lived in Belgium, and there's the plaque commemorates being in that area. And there's a beach city in Belgium that has an entire history walk dedicated to the late great Marvin Gaye. They have a plaque on the apartment where he used to live, the place where he used to play basketball. I mean, it's a whole walk. I was like, okay.
Right. That's awesome. Yep. So like I said, I'm just a little Black woman trying to pay some bills with my little.
You're so funny. I love you.
Well, here's the thing, that it can benefit both of you. You get double coverage. Yeah, and you get people talking about two books with the same title, and people may not even realize that. So, you know, I'm sure it will
jump. I said, my thought is everybody ought to buy both books.
Yeah. And guess what? I did. That's what I did. I have your book, and then I have his book. I haven't read either one yet.
Oh, there you go. That's my thought.
Yeah. Now tell us what your book is about, though.
This American Daughters is plain American Daughters. It's about the secret interracial friendship between Alice Roosevelt Longworth and Portia Washington Pickton. So unbeknownst to many, these two women, one white, one Black, daughters of famous statesmen Theodore Roosevelt and Booker T. Washington, were friends, and they were friends for about 3/4 of the 20th century. They both lived to be very old ladies, and yeah, they were friends, and they made friends as rebel teenage daughters in the wake of the famous dinner when Booker T. Washington went to the White House.
Okay.
Dinner. Poor TR.
Yeah, he caught a lot of flack for that.
Yeah, exactly. He just got to be president because McKinley was assassinated in the late summer of 1901. So he got to be president, and he said, "Well, just have old Booker T. Washington over for dinner, and we can talk about all the stuff he's wanting to talk about, race and everything like that." And he just must not have known that that was the first time a Black man had walked through the front door of the White House to have dinner. I pictured them sitting there and talking about all kinds of stuff, but eventually coming around to, I got this daughter, and she drives me crazy. Because they were both like about a year apart, 17 and 18 years old at the time, and for different reasons, driving their fathers nuts. So yeah, Booker T left, and the country went crazy. Went just like you said. They lost their minds over this happening. Cartoons, people saying stuff against TR, all kinds of things. They had cartoons of Booker T having his hands on Alice in a nefarious and lascivious kind of way. Just craziness ensued. Alice wasn't even there yet because her father did not want to bring her down out of wherever she was, because, of course, he was afraid she was going to start acting crazy. So
Right.
they hadn't even moved. All of them had moved into the White House real good at that point. Something insane. So it was like, it happened to be the next week that TR and Booker T's paths were going to cross again. And it just so happened that that was the trip. TR was going to pick up Alice to bring her down to Washington, D.C. And that Booker T was there also in Connecticut because Portia was going to school in New England and was very, very homesick.
Oh.
They met. That's where they met, in the wake of their fathers having this. It was a speech kind of commemoration at Yale University in 1901. And the two of them, even though one of them is a white woman, one of them is a Black woman, had a lot in common. These great statesmen fathers. Their mothers dying at horrifically early ages in their lives. Stepmothers who couldn't stand them. And this pressure that they both had to find a man to marry that would be somewhere near, if not exceeding, what Daddy did. That would be some kind of thing. So they both had a lot in common, and their lives, as I divided the book, as good daughters, good wives, good mothers, and finally the ways in which the book only goes to 1930 though.
Okay.
Okay.
700-page books these days, so it only goes to 1930, but the ways in which they both found freedom, liberation.
So is this picture, is that actually them?
I don't think so, girl. I think they just pulled a picture of a white
That's some AI
Okay.
stuff,
Okay.
So is the story, how much of real life is based on the story? Is the story based on real life, or do you draw a lot from actual history to write the story?
Well, yeah. I mean, in terms of what happened to Alice, what happened to Portia, all of that's in there, truthfully. And the question is when and how they overlapped at any point in time, because we don't know. The whole aspect, and then one of the things that has always intrigued me, and this was I think it was a recent poll or something that was done about how many Americans have a friend of another race. And the percentages are not, that high in terms of that. So seeing that there are a couple of other books that were dealing with this aspect of interracial friendship, which you probably know about, Can't We Be Friends, in the First Ladies. I said, well, this friendship between Portia and Alice actually predates both of those in terms of that having started in 1901. And like I said, I just couldn't help but be struck by how much they had in common that was so important in terms of young women who are expected to marry and immediately begin having children and supporting a husband and stuff when it had all gone so horrifically wrong for the mothers that they never knew. It would be frightening, I would think. And so I think that Portia was somebody who probably had a different kind of insight into Alice Roosevelt Longworth, who, of course, is renowned for her feistiness and being out there as she was, as she herself talked about it. Her celebrity, or the case for a celebrity culture, was made at a time for her when her father got to be president, when you didn't even have movies yet.
Right.
Stars to fixate on. So who did they fixate on but this president's daughter, who was so rebellious? Ha ha ha, isn't that great how she, her father said, I can either run the country or I can control Alice, but I can't do both at the same time. Or, when he said there'll be no smoking under this roof, and she goes up on the roof and smokes. And
That's that way she's not under the roof. Well, she's on top of the roof. That is something a rebellious teenager would do.
Yeah. But I mean, she was like that all her life. And my question, even though there are other historical fiction novels about her, my question was like, why? Why is she like that? And Portia is like the only person who has some insight into this whole phenomenon that I call Daddy, look at me, look at me. He named her Alice. Her mother her mother and grandmother died on the same day when she was 2 days.
Wow.
When she was 2 years old. They had to summon TR when he was at that point in the New York State legislature to come home. He came home and his brother opened the door and said, there is a curse on this house. And he had spent most of the day, which happened to be Valentine's Day, back and forth between his mother and his wife, because they were both dying. Baby 2 days old, what do they name her after her mother? He could never say her name. He never speaks her name.
Okay.
And then to make it worse, the woman that he marries is somebody he was supposed to marry before he met this mother at college. So she don't want to say her name either. Because it reminds her of the heifer that stole her man while he was up at Harvard.
Well, that's why she had issues.
That's what I was gonna say.
Have issues.
He never talks about that. Like, it makes sense. And Portia is probably the only person in the world who completely understood for similar reasons. Yeah.
Okay. And what made you, because you write about historical figures all the time. So and some of it some of the writing you do is pure fiction. It's but what made you be interested in this topic, and what did you use for research to get the backstory?
Well, Alice has a number of biographies because she's a president's daughter, like I said, and was at one point like a celebrity in American culture. There was a color named after her. There were songs written about her. I mean, it's just like everybody was like obsessed at one point back in the early 20th century with her. Portia also has biographies as well, which is partly what I used in terms of the research to determine when and how they might have overlapped and re-encountered one another in terms of their friendship up to Portia's death in 1978 and Alice dies 2 years later in 1980. So yeah.
And you said they both lived to be.
I must say that's a very long life.
They live long. They both lived long lives.
They both lived long lives. Yeah, and there's actual story beyond, like I said, 1930, because of what happened with them in their lives. But like I said, the question always intrigued me about interracial friendship. Why we don't talk about it more. Why it doesn't exist a lot more. And I thought that writing a story about these two might show people something about, what people might have in common. in spite of racial difference in terms of that. And the sort of sub-theme of the book also has a lot to do with what happens when a woman doesn't get to do what she's meant to do in her life. That women should be permitted to pursue the labor and the passions that they want to pursue. And in that way, even though Alice is this extremely privileged president's daughter, Portia is the one who is more privileged in that respect, because she gets to do more of what she wants in terms of studying her classical music, going to Germany to study her music, and being a musical educator. And ultimately, Alice is like a bird in a gilded cage. If she had been around today, she would, could have easily run for political office or been a campaign manager or whatever. But because of the expectations of women back then, she couldn't use her sharp political acumen, the thing that she loved the most, to her advantage. And so she went about behavior in a destructive kind of way. And I thought it's important to have a story to talk about all of those things.
Okay. Now
That's
you did
interesting. I
refer.
like how you said that bird in a gilded cage. That's a
Yeah.
really strong comparison.
Yeah.
It is. And you referred to two other books that we've had both of them on the show. Denny Bryce with Can't We Be Friends? And that's about Ella Fitzgerald and Marilyn Monroe.
Right.
And then Victoria Christopher Murray's book, The First Ladies, which is about Eleanor Roosevelt and Mary McLeod Bethune.
Yes.
So yeah, there is something historical. Now, we don't really have, I'm trying to think, that are there contemporary books with that same theme of more contemporary people?
Yeah, whenever you see that, it's always written by white authors more than it is Black authors. The last to remember, it was B.B. Moore Campbell who wrote about it some decades ago.
Okay.
But not really. And like I said, that is something that has always intrigued me in terms of why not.
Well, I'm glad that the point of view and the voice is being told now from our vantage point, from our culture, because the things that would stand out for us are going to be different than the things that would prompt someone else to. Even our motivations, our family structure dynamic.
Yep.
Certainly our opportunities, our options.
Yes, exactly. And all of those things in terms of the way their marriages worked, all of those things have impact, in terms of the difference, in terms of their racial aspects. But they managed to remain connected, I think, because of those early connections with, people could call them daddy issues or whatever, in terms of that daddy issues, stepmama issues, whatever, in terms of that. But yes, it worked differently for them. And like I said, it's one thing to think about privilege and what that means for a white woman or whatever, but Portia was more free ultimately to do what she desired to do, and did that. And so I think some people, it will challenge them in terms of thinking about in that way.
So. Tony Benita, who watches the show weekly, and she's with the PWOC book club in Florida. I forgot where in Florida, but she says that she's read your book and she said it was very interesting and she learned a lot. So she wrote in the comments there. And I just think it's just the time that we're in now. There's so much history being unearthed through books and being told from the vantage point of Black authors. And it really, there's so much being told. Right now, I'm reading Rashonda Tate's book, The Queen of Sugar Hill. And I'm almost done with that. Our book club picked it. So there's a lot that's on the Hollywood side of things.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that it can continue. I'm
Yes.
very hopeful and prayerful that it can continue. So I appreciate being able to come on the show and talk about my American Daughter. So hopefully more people will buy it and it can continue.
Well, for sure. I think it's I really like the cover, even though I thought that these were the actual women, but I really like the positioning of I like the way they made
Yeah,
the cover.
yeah, I like the cover ultimately too. My only
It captures your attention, especially having the
It
White House in
does.
the background.
It does.
the only suggestion I made was about the red popping, so that was my little suggestion. But
Okay, with the shawl.
yeah, the shawl and the font.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, that was my little input, but
Okay.
the previous
Well,
one.
it does match the word. Now, was that before or after the wording was read?
The what?
The wording, the
Oh,
title.
the title. Oh no, that was early on when they changed it. It was early on in the process.
Okay. Okay. Well, then, so they made whoever did the font, the color on the font, they
Yeah.
made it match the shawl.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it tied it all together.
That
So,
was a suggestion.
before we go, I wanted to make you aware of something because I wasn't sure if you knew about it. Your other book, By Her Own Design. Let me wait. I have a copy. Let me pull it. Do you have a copy?
I do hear it.
Well, show yours, then I don't have to, go off camera. But I'm a Georgetown alumnus,
Okay.
and Georgetown has a book club, and they picked your book. Were you aware of it?
No, I didn't know that. I hear about
Okay.
other people who've done it, but I did not know Georgetown did. I'm so
They're-
honored.
Yeah, they're reading it now. And so what I need to do is I need to send you the information for the person who's over that. And so I can connect you all together so you can really benefit from them reading your book. I thought they had coordinated it with you.
No,
And I
I
said,
had
oh,
no
wow,
idea.
they're reading Piper's
What
book.
a nice surprise, isn't it?
I'm honored. I am so honored to hear that. I love Georgetown. Whenever I go to Washington, D.C., I try to slip over there. It's a cool historical place. So, all of that.
Where
But
are you
I'm
located
honored.
now?
I'm in Atlanta.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in Atlanta, but I love Washington, D.C. and that particular part of Washington, D.C. Like I say, it's so historical. I just love going over there. So
Yeah, Georgetown is beautiful.
yeah, it is. It is. And I'm
It
honored
is.
to believe that. Like that is so cool.
Yeah, they have an alumni book club.
Okay.
And so I don't know how many members they have or any of that, but I'm in the loop. I don't read all the books. Sometimes I get pissed off. In fact, this is the first Black book I think they picked.
All right.
That's
what we want to hear about.
So yeah, so I said, wow, Piper's in the loop.
Yes.
Piper's in there.
I am so glad to hear that. That is awesome. And it's fifth printing.
So it was a wonderful story. I loved it. So
thank you.
I read it when it was out. I think I read it after you were on the show talking about the book.
Yes. It was a little bit later after it came out. So,
so I will once the show ends, I will
please
connect you on the email with the people, and then you can really take full advantage of it. Maybe they might even have you on a Zoom call or something, and so you can really
love it.
some books.
I love it. Love talking about in love. So anytime. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Piper, we got 1 minute left. I do want to find out what you always have another book coming out.
Do I?
So do you have
another book? This next one, and like the reason why I talked about the importance of people buying and supporting this is because, of course, the forces, the powers that be, think we don't do enough to support these books. So the more that can be done, the easier it will be, hopefully, for me to sell this next one that I've been working on for about nearly a year.
So well, you have support out there, so if they need people to vouch for you.
Yeah, and we put the link in the chat. So everybody make sure you buy this book.
American Daughters by Piper Hughes.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Piper, for being a guest on the show, and continue best wishes. And I will be in touch with you. Look for an email sometime tonight.
Okay, I will. Bye-bye, both of you. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
you're
you. Have a
welcome.
great night.
You too.
Okay, so our next guest is the author of the American Daughters, the American Daughters book. And this is the one that we were talking about as well. And so his name is Maurice Carlos Ruffin. And the books are completely different stories, totally different. But I just thought it was just really coincidental that they were on the same night. So, Maurice, welcome to Black Authors Matter TV.
Good evening, ladies. How you doing?
Doing
Wonderful. How are
great.
you tonight?
Thank you so much for having me. I was so sorry to miss the earlier date, but I'm very happy to be here tonight with you and also Piper earlier.
Right. It was just the way it turned out. You all ended up, because of the reschedule, you all ended up on the same night. And that was really just serendipity. So I have a copy of your book, and I haven't had a chance to read it yet because, as the people who watch the show know, my to be read shelf is massive. But both books are on my list of future reads in the next month to 2 months. So congratulations on the book making the rounds. And the setting is historical as well. So why don't you tell us what the book is about in terms of the overall plot without giving away spoilers?
My pleasure. Well, first of all, I want to say, make sure that everybody out there gets a copy of Piper's book. You need to buy a copy of it and buy a copy for your friends as well and your family. She's really cool. It's my first time hearing her talk on your program. So yeah, support Piper.
Okay, well, thank you. Because we all have to spread the love and support each other, because the iron sharpens iron, as they say. So
that's right.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, we're one community. So my book is The American Daughters, as you already said. It's pretty straightforward. The book is set in New Orleans in the 1840s and 50s. And the main character, who's pictured here on the cover, when she's a girl, she and her mother, Sidney, are brought to the city from the country. They had been at one of those, plantations. And Audie discovers that there is a secret society of Black women and girls in New Orleans who have come together to sabotage and undermine the Confederates. And so they're doing all kind of dirty tricks to basically just disable the Confederates. And so this is really a book about Black women in community coming together to support each other. There's a lot of humor, there's a lot of love in it. And to me, it's a very positive story.
Wow. Sound like I say a lot when I hear about these types of stories. It's a lot of layers. And as I'm listening to you tell us about the story, I can just imagine the amount of research that it took to just bring this story together.
Oh yeah, definitely, Doctor. Really 20 years of research. I'm not exaggerating. So I'm a former corporate lawyer. I'm still a lawyer, but I don't practice anymore. And during my lunch breaks in New Orleans, I'd often leave my office and go down to the French Quarter where they had these archives. And so literally 20 years ago, 2004, I was in an archive and I found some documents that talked about how the Confederates during the Civil War, they didn't really fight like Confederates in other locations. And I kept wondering, why would they not fight harder? Not that I want them to fight and win, but then when I thought about it over a long period of time and doing other research about Black women in resistance movements, I realized, I know what happened. Like, if my great-great-grandmother times 8, was around that time, I know what her personality would be like. She would be doing things behind the scene to support her family and protect them. And so I also learned that, for example, during that time, poisoning was really popular. Apparently it's the most popular way to kill somebody. And so it kind of came together. Then I read documents, about Sojourner Truth, about Harriet Tubman, about other women in resistance movements. The mother in my book, Sidney, is named after a resistance fighter in Haiti during the revolution over there. And so it kind of all came together. And then also stories from my own ancestors that my grandmother and my mother told me over the years. I kind of mixed it all together to make this story.
Oh, okay.
So you're
Wow.
actually from New Orleans?
I am. I'm 100% New Orleans. Yes.
Oh,
Ooh.
I'm just from New Orleans. Y'all might be kin.
Right.
Probably. Probably.
Wait, hold on. What ward are you from?
I'm from New Orleans East.
Okay, so you're from the Ninth Ward.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
From the Ninth
Yes.
Ward too.
Yeah. Not the lower nine, but just the general nine.
No, I'm from the lower 9.
My grandma's house was out there.
Okay, see, I'm telling you, we talk long enough. We're gonna know the same people. Watch.
Uh-huh, for sure.
Yeah, well, I'm not from New Orleans.
That's all right.
In fact, I've only visited New Orleans a couple of times. Because normally when we go east, we end up bypassing New Orleans.
Mhm.
From Houston, when we go from Texas, if I do the southern route, we go through Slidell, so we don't have to go through New Orleans.
Oh, you skip right past.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I rarely have like gone into the city, only a couple of times.
You got to come down and get some of this gumbo, get some
I know.
jambalaya.
Well, half of Louisiana is in Houston, Texas. It's Houston
That's true.
especially. So we got lots of Cajun food and gumbo. People who make authentic gumbo. We got a lot. We got a lot
That's
of
true.
that.
That is true.
So the food is here.
Well, while
The
we're talking
Orleans
about
food.
New Orleans, Piper told us that there's a plaque somewhere in New Orleans that commemorates you writing one of your books in their coffee shop.
Yes, it is. It's true story. It's a little embarrassing, but I accept it. Yeah, they put that up a few years ago. The coffee shop is called the Orange Couch.
The
And
Orange Couch. Okay,
the
I'm going to
Orange
be in
Couch.
New Orleans this weekend, so I'm going to go find the Orange Couch because I've never been there.
Yeah, it's a very nice place, very clean. It's a nice cafe. And Piper mentioned we have a friend in common, Farrah Rochon, who's a novelist also. And so, she's a fantastic writer. They both are obviously. And the book that I wrote at the Orange Couch was my first novel. It's called We Cast a Shadow. I wrote this. It came out about 5 years ago now. And so I would always go there after work on weekends and just be sitting at the same table over and over again. And the owner, his name was Fred. I guess he was like, well, we should put a little marker that you had been here all these years.
Wow,
That's awesome.
that is really neat. What an honor.
Yeah, it is.
Mhm. So for your book, The American Daughters, how much of the spy subplot is accurate historically, or did you embellish that for storytelling purposes?
Well, it's two things. We know, for example, that Black women were involved in spying, and for a long time that those facts were denied. So to give a perfect example, anybody who's gone to school, like even middle school, high school in the past 50 years, knew about Harriet Tubman being this person who was working with the Underground Railroad to free enslaved people. But then come to find out that she actually got a pension from the U.S. military because she worked on their behalf as a spy, and she was actually part of the Army back in the old days. And so, that was not widely known until, I guess, relatively recently. And so I sort of took that fact, in fact, of other movements around the country, and I took this idea from a woman named Sadia Hartman. She is a historian. She's won a Genius Grant, it's like $1 million. So she's like a big, big deal. But she won this big prize for this idea that she has called critical fabulation. Long story short, critical fabulation says it's okay to sort of infer some facts, even if you don't have it based on what you do know. So, people will sometimes say that George Washington chopped down a cherry tree. He never did that, right? But it tells you how the nation wants us to feel about that man. If he looks good, we all look good. So the way I see it, knowing what I know about, actual Black women and girls in the past, about resistance movements, my family, y'all family, that kind of thing, I can infer that they weren't all just like, cowering in a corner somewhere, that they were actually making plans, taking actions, and again, being in community and working together to make their lives better, make a better future for all of us.
Well, that's certainly true. We have had to be, out of necessity, extremely creative.
That's right. That's exactly right.
And also spiritual. We've had a lot of faith. If without the faith of Black women, and I'm not saying men didn't have faith. I'm just saying a Black woman's faith is different. Maybe because we're mothers, you know. But without that, I'm not sure we'd be here today. I mean,
Oh, look, I
the
know I
three of
wouldn't
us
be.
sitting here.
Look, without the love of Black women, I don't think there would be anything to even talk about, you know, and there are, you know, communities in history that don't exist anymore, you know, because for whatever reason, they were just being too oppressed. And I really feel like with the ingenuity and brilliance of Black women and girls throughout history, that's why I'm here. I know that for certain. And even though my grandmother, who was an activist, and my mother, who, you know, doesn't suffer fools lightly, you know, that support is a beautiful thing. And I really appreciate it. That's why I wrote this book.
Yeah. Now, you're a lawyer, but are you a journalist as well? Have you done any?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Sometimes.
Yeah, a little bit. Sometimes I get asked to write pieces. I mean, I've written for the New York Times and I've written for the LA Times, and other publications. Often it's more, I mean, how would you even describe it? Like sometimes I'll be asked to interview people. Like for example, a year ago I interviewed Big Frida for a magazine. Um, Sometimes I'll be asked to sort of give perspective on something that's happened. So a few years ago, I think it was 2017, there was a hurricane in Houston, and they asked me to sort of report on it and offer an opinion piece about it because of my experience in New Orleans with Katrina. So I do those kind of things. Yeah.
Interesting, because I live in Houston, so I know the hurricane you're referring to. So, because we don't have them a lot,
Yeah.
but we do have them. They come through. That might have been Ike.
I think so.
Uh,
I think so.
yeah, and we were fortunate, uh, as far as where we live. We're on higher ground, so we didn't have the flooding. Um, and we're also where our house is, we're near a water treatment plant. So when they turn the power back on, those areas are where they get turned on first. So we were only out of power for maybe a day and a half. Some people didn't have power for 2, 3 weeks.
Wow. You picked the right spot there.
Yeah, the schools were closed. A lot of them were closed for 2 or 3 weeks because
Mhm.
the schools didn't have power.
Right.
Yeah.
And
One amazing thing that came out of that hurricane in Houston was the amount of people from New Orleans who pitched in to help.
Mhm.
There were churches in New Orleans sending busloads of people to Houston to help recovery, and many people were collecting clothing items and so forth because of what New Orleans had gone through.
right,
So we understood what Houston was going through, and it was really great to see that city picking up and saying we need to help Houston the way we were helped when we were hit by Hurricane Katrina.
yeah, that's
That's
true
exactly
because
right.
because
Yeah.
when that happened, there were thousands of people who came to Houston, and a lot of churches were opened their buildings as shelters, and it was, and a lot of them never left. They basically just relocated to Houston once they
Well,
got
a
here.
lot of my family had evacuated to Houston during Katrina, and you know, I
Okay.
nothing but good things to say. You know, people in Houston and all around the area. You know, even like Katy and Woodlands were like helping my family out in various ways, and so I have great appreciation for that period.
Right. It was a traumatic thing. So, from your book, The American Daughters, tell us uh something that you want the readers to know about in terms of the plot line, that I don't want you to do any spoilers, but you know, some different angles. When you write a book, is not necessarily linear in terms of the
Right.
writing the story. There are different arcs and uh,
Hmm.
different things in there. So just give us a little more about what the book is about, and how how difficult was it for you to sell this concept to a publisher?
Yeah. Well, a couple of
Or
brief
easy?
things.
It could have been easy. So I shouldn't say assume it's difficult.
A couple of things on that point. You know, first of all, I think many people out there have probably seen movies like 12 Years a Slave, and many people have, read books. And there's almost a cliche now where if you have people who look like us during that time period, they're almost always on plantations. And as a New Orleans person, I knew, and I did research on it, that half of the Black people in New Orleans in 1850 were free. And so I wanted to have a chance to bring that out because I had found some research, for example, that some of the richest people in the city were these Creole Black women who, for decades had been owning businesses. And there was one lady who was so rich, she had built her own school because it was illegal for the state to fund public schools for Black people. So this book has a lot of free Black folks of color
Okay.
who've been educated, who have their own businesses. One of the characters, she had traveled to Europe, and this happened in real life as well. And so I want to show something that I've never seen depicted in a book or in a film, for example. And then, beyond that, a lot of the book is about, again, these sort of connections. Audie's the main character, and pretty early on, she meets this young lady named Lenore. They become best friends. And I thought about how in a lot of those books and movies I've talked about, you rarely see Black women and girls just having the conversation. Like it's, they're somewhere being hit by something bad is happening to them, but it's like, just let them just talk for a minute. So I have many moments like that in the book. In terms of selling it, I have been with the same publisher now since my first book. This is my third book. It's One World Random House in New York. My editor is Nicole Counts, and we have a good relationship. And so once I had the drafts pretty tight, and I went through my agent and presented it to her, she was on board immediately and helped me finish it up. And it was a smooth process. Now, earlier, when I was getting started with my first book, it took longer to find a publisher. But in recent years, I've been on a pretty smooth track.
I will say that I'm very glad that you made the point about free people of color in New Orleans. A little known fact, and like you said, the popular narrative is that everywhere in the South, every Black person was enslaved. But a little known fact is that New Orleans had the highest number of free people of color.
That's right.
And just as you said, they owned businesses, they owned land, they were living their lives. So, I mean, it's good to be able to make that point.
Yes, thank you.
Now, have either of you all seen the movie? I was just sitting here thinking, trying to remember the name of it because I knew the storyline. It's an old film. It stars Sidney Poitier as a young actor and Clark Gable. And it was called Band of Angels. And the whole movie was set in New Orleans. And Sidney Poitier was free. And there was a couple of Black women in there that were free too. I think Clark Gable owned, it wasn't a plantation though. It's more like in the quarter. But the women were all free and bossing people around, in charge. So if you haven't seen that movie, it's a classic film. It's streaming somewhere, I'm sure. It's called Band of Angels. It's really
I've
good.
never seen it, but I'm going to look for it now that you've mentioned it.
Yeah, Sidney Poitier.
I'm going to check it out.
It's very good. Some of those old movies were really groundbreaking in terms of roles that Black people played. A lot of them were stereotyped, but then there were others that allowed for, and Sidney Poitier was at the forefront of a lot of that.
That's right.
As an actor, he was in a lot of movies where he didn't play the stereotypical role. So I did want to find out some of your other work. You said you had 3 books, and you showed us the first book. What was the second book?
So it's over here somewhere.
And are they connected? Or are they completely separate?
Let's see. I may have put it away, but oh wait, there it is. Yeah. My second book is a collection of short stories, and it's called The Ones Who Don't Say They Love You. It's 19 short stories. Almost all the characters in the stories are Black, and my idea behind that collection was, oftentimes if you ask people who are the New Orleans writers, they will name people who are not natives, probably not Black, and maybe they had lived in the city for a period of time, but they're not. So for example, William Faulkner often gets named, or Tennessee Williams gets named often. There was some other places.
Festival named after him in New Orleans.
It is true. It was true. I went to the festival a couple of weeks ago, and it's you think he was like a native guy, basically. And so one of my missions as a writer from the city of New Orleans is I want to see my community. I want to see my family and my friends and people I work with in stories. And so I tried to, in the 19 stories in the collection, have a wide variety of characters. So from like a young man living on the street to a lady who owns her own company to another guy who's a lawyer and he's married and having adventures in the French Quarter. There's a great variety of like characters and tones. Some stories are very dark and serious. Some stories are very humorous and strange. And the hope being that it inspires other writers who are local from the community to write their own stories and to be willing to put their stories out there into the world.
Awesome. And I'm really glad you said that because being an author from New Orleans, I remember when I first came back home after publishing my first book years ago, I would run into people who would say, well, you're going to sell your book in other cities because people in New Orleans don't read, or we're in the bottoms. We don't read here. And this is people saying this, not about other people. They're including themselves in that
Right.
we don't read, we don't write. And I'm just so glad that since that, I guess I never noticed it prior to then, but since that moment, I've seen people changing that narrative, and the written word is becoming more popular. It's actually becoming booming now, with more people, with more authors in the area, with more book clubs in the area, more readers in the area, and we're quickly changing that narrative. So I'm really glad that you said what you said, because it shows that we are changing that narrative.
Yeah, it is changing. We've always been a storytelling community, especially through our music. But, I want to give a shout out to 2 Black bookstores in the city. There's Community Book Center. They've been around for a long time. Those ladies have been, putting out knowledge and literature into the community for a long time. There's also a newer bookstore that opened about 3 years ago called Baldwin and Company. And they're fantastic. Baldwin and Company, it's a bookstore. It's a coffee shop. They have the biggest readings I've ever seen. Like they'll bring in, national celebrities, like, sports people like Asia Wilson and Stephen Smith and those kind of people. But also local authors as well. I mean, I was there last Saturday and they had a reading of children's books for local children, and it's a literacy program and a financial literacy program. So Baldwin is doing great things as well. I love all of them so much.
Are you familiar with them, Rhonda?
I'm familiar with both of the bookstores, and just as he said, Community Book Center has been around for a very long time. They're like a staple of the community. People come there just to gather.
Okay.
They call them Mama Vera and Mama.
That's right. That's right.
So it's a bookstore that's very supportive of the community, and they're in what's called the Bayou Road corridor. So they're on this street where almost all of the businesses on that one couple of blocks are all Black owned. So there are people who come to that area just to go in and out of the shops and just to talk to the restaurants and shopkeepers. It's a great area.
It really is. It's a beautiful area.
Now, I wanted to ask you about, because we only have a couple minutes left, about your short story writing. What makes for a good short story? I'm not a short story reader or writer. I'm a writer, but I'm not. Have I ever written a short story? I don't think so. But I wrote a lot of commentary, like op-eds, for a long time. But op-eds are a lot shorter than a short story. So, how many words are in a typical? Is there a typical short story length?
Oh, sure.
How do you decide how to create the dynamic where you can tell a whole story in a few words?
Yeah, I mean, I teach in several programs. My main job is at LSU as a creative writing professor.
Okay.
I think that the vague rule for short stories is you could read it in one sitting. Now, some people read faster than others. Maybe on average, page-wise, short stories are between maybe 6 and 20 pages, give or take. They can be shorter or longer. But for me, what makes a short story is usually it's about one thing, and it's very tight. And so if I tell you the story, you could almost like recite all the major plot points back and give somebody the sort of the feeling and the vibe of how it hits, that kind of thing. Versus with a novel, it can be hundreds of pages, and it can go on for a century, and it can make all those different moves, and people just kind of like chatting and just kind of like hanging out. So short stories are always tight, in my opinion.
Okay.
I love a good short story where once you've reached the end, you still feel like you've read a full story.
Yes,
You don't feel
absolutely.
like anything's been left out. So that's what I
Absolutely.
love about short stories. It really kind of helps us to exercise our chops, so to speak, as writers.
Yeah, it's one of my goals. I want you to feel like you're satisfied when you put it down.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I might have to get a copy of your book, as um some of our readers said. Somebody, Curtis Stevenson, who watches the show every week or almost every week, said he was looking forward to picking up both of the books. Both American Daughters books. And then oh, and Tony Benita said another book to purchase. Yeah, that's the thing about our show is we've been almost 4 years and missing hardly any Tuesdays.
Mm,
So and we've interviewed over 600 people during that
wow.
amount of time. So it's a lot of books. And not every guest is an author. Tonight, all the guests are authors, but we have bookstores on and book clubs and all kinds of people doing book things that aren't necessarily authors. So we need to have at least one of the bookstores from New Orleans. We haven't had them on the show, so we need to get them on.
Yeah, get Mama Vera and DJ from Baldwin on here. They would love to talk to you. And I just want to say I appreciate y'all and all the work that you're doing, spreading literature in the written word to people is really important that this be done.
Well, what we hope we add to the book sales of the authors who on, and also just the exposure to African American literature. That a lot of people don't realize how many people are writing books. There's lots and lots of Black people writing all kinds of books. And it's not just only one narrow genre, or it's not only urban. It's not only street books. Even within a genre, there's lots and lots of different books. For example, these two books are both historical fiction, but they're completely different.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they have the same title almost, but they're totally different stories.
That's
so
right.
There's lots and lots of writing being done, and lots of good writing. I mean, solid storytelling. We're not where we were 100 years ago, where there were only a few people who wrote and released books, and it was a limited amount of things to choose from. Now, the challenge is on the budget that you have to pick, because you can't buy every book. So, but that's an abundance of riches, so to speak.
Well, also a shout out to the libraries that do an important job, allowing us to get access to more books than we could otherwise get our hands on.
Absolutely.
Right. So how's the book doing overall? Have you gotten some feedback?
The book, I feel blessed and highly favored. The book is my first national bestseller, and I go to. Thank you. I've been on book tour in the airports. I've seen it in the airports in Atlanta. I think in Houston. I think in DC as well. So it's right there on the shelves, and it's being sold, and people seem to like it.
Well, that's good. Congratulations. And we were trying to get you on a month ago, and you were so busy. So I'm glad that you were able to put us on your schedule and tell us about your story. And I hope people go out and buy the book.
Well, I appreciate you very much. It is quite an accomplishment to have done 600 interviews in less than 4 years. That is amazing. Keep going.
Well, we plan to. So, yeah, it
thank you for your
seems
support
daunting
as well.
a little bit, but we enjoy it. We love doing it, and we're committed. So anyway, you have a great evening, Maurice. Thank you again for being a guest on the show, and continued success with
Thank you so much.
the American Daughters and your backlist too.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you. Well, y'all have a great night. Thank you so much for this.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, I didn't know we were going to be talking about all things New Orleans, but that was good. And somebody said that they had seen that movie. Deborah Thompson said she saw the movie And she said they show it on Turner Classic Movies sometimes. I haven't seen it in a long time, but
I wanted to address, somebody put a comment in saying, what are we doing about Raleigh in the Black children's bookstore? I would say that if there's something that you want us to do to support that Black bookstore, I think that maybe you could come across and let us know what it is that you think we should be doing, because maybe we don't happen to know about the Black bookstore in Raleigh, and we would love to support if we knew. But I think sometimes we suffer from a little bit of whataboutism. And no matter how much good we're doing, somebody's going to ask us, well, what are you doing about this or that? And it just may happen to be that we don't know about it and we would love to support. So if you could send us more information about this bookstore and why we should support it, I'm quite sure we can do something to support it.
well, thank you. Now I did hear about it.
And
But I just in passing, like you know how you hear things or you see something and you don't have all the details. But on this show, we have a very focused objective. And probably the reason why we've been around for 4 years every Tuesday is because we stick with our focus and objective. We don't try to be everything to everybody. We can't. Our job on this show is to support African American authors, bookstores, book clubs, everything having to do with African American literature, and bring it to the public. So what we can do based on our mission as a show is we can get more information, find out the name of the bookstore, and invite the owner to be on the show to make people aware of the challenges that she's having. And that's what we can do. And then that'll get people to support it, because we have viewers from all over the country and even the world. You know, I checked our stats recently, and we get views on this show on our Facebook page from at least 12 different countries.
and that's wonderful. And that's why I think that there may be something that we can do, but let us know what we can do. You know,
Yeah, we want to raise awareness by having the person on, and then she can tell us in her own words what is going on. So that's what we will investigate and see if we can make that happen. So anyway, we have our next guest, and she has an interesting book title. Her name is LaToya Cadlett, I think that's how it's pronounced. She has an interesting book title, which is A Simple Guide to Interpreting Cardiac Rhythms. So I'm wondering, first of all, what does that mean? How do you do it? How does she come up with the concept and all of those things? So LaToya, welcome to Black Authors Matter TV.
Hello, hi.
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 Welcome to the show. And I was just telling the audience your book title. And if you want to, do you have a copy of your book handy?
I do. I don't know. Can you see me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
This is it.
Yes, we can see it. So it looks like you have one of those things like an EKG or
Yes.
echocardiogram. Okay. Because my husband recently had a pacemaker put in, so I've been, at the cardiologist for the last several months, just learning about the heart and how important the heart rate is to good health. So, are you in the healthcare field?
Yes, I am. I'm a certified rhythm analysis technician, and basically that's what I do. I work in a telemetry center inside a hospital setting, and we analyze heart rhythms all day. And we are like the second eyes for the nurses to, if anything happens, because, the nurse is busy, she's dealing with multiple things. And so she can't watch everything at all times. And then that's where we come in. We're looking and we're watching those patients' hearts for our 8 or 12-hour shifts. And if we see any little blip, anything wrong, or if anything's off, we let them know so they can, take the proper interventions to, fix it and, keep that patient safe.
It sounds like an important job that's a lot of people don't realize is very important to the process.
It is. It's very important. And that's the reason why I came out with this book, because in the past years, the healthcare system nationwide is learning that they are needing more and more education on heart rhythm interpretation and analysis, because they're finding that there's been a lot of just, sentinel unsafe events that were unnecessarily happening just due because, just misinterpretations or just, the healthcare staff not really recognizing what's happening on the patient's monitor, or they're just missing little things just because they're just busy. They're so busy with doing their job that they'll miss little things. So the American Nurses Association, they're definitely looking to partner, do interprofessional partnerships with people who, like myself, I analyze heart rhythms all day, every day. I've been doing this for 20 years. And so, really bring us up to help just educate and just really help the nurses out so we can help keep the patients safe.
Okay, so what is something that a layperson would need to know about cardiac rhythms?
Well, they are interesting. And heart rhythms is basically when you're in the hospital room and you see the little monitors, and movies kind of give you a little misconception of it, but when you see the monitor and the little blips and this, beep and all that, and that's just it's the electrical representation of what the heart's doing electrically. But it does play, it's so many different components, and it is a lot to it. So for a nurse to do her nursing field and then to add on all this cardiac, it can be overwhelming. And so what they just need to know is, basically what the normal heart looks like. So once you know what a normal heart rhythm looks like and just how the heart functions normally, anything outside of that is not normal, it's abnormal, and it's an arrhythmia. And arrhythmias can be fatal to you. So we definitely want to watch for that. And we want to watch so when we see that it's normal, and then when suddenly it's not normal, that's when we're like, okay, something's changed, something's happening. Let's get the nurse, let's get the doctors, go check the patients so they can, intervene and fix whatever's happened or what's changed inside that heart. So it's definitely important. So any little blips or any little, I'm trying to think of how to say it without getting all medical terms.
Weeds, without getting too technical. That's why I said a lay person. So will know, a person who's not trained in medicine would be able to appreciate the information about the heart.
Yeah. But just knowing your normals, like that's a big, and so many people don't know this. And that's what I try to say if you knowing what your normal, because everybody's normal is different. So if you pay attention to what your normal is, when that change happens, you can recognize it easily and faster. And then, the fastest intervention is the best. As soon as you recognize it and then you can get the help, then it really increases your chances of living so much more. So knowing your norms, knowing what your normal looks like, and and it's okay when you go to the doctors. Like I just had my doctor's appointment. I'm 42 years old, and the doctor's like, "Oh, you need an EKG," and I'm like, "Yeah, okay." And it was just cool because I didn't never have one before, but I know what it is. But I've seen everybody else's heart, but I didn't never seen my own heart. And it was just cool to see my own heart on the EKG and see my norm. So now I know my normal, I know my baseline. And so, God forbid, but I try to stay pretty healthy. And, if anything changes, then I'm like, okay, it changed. I did this, I was doing this activity, or I tried something new and something changed. So it's best to know what is normal for you. And that helps the healthcare professional, the nurses, it helps so much when you know you're normal, and then they can easily recognize the change. So that's one of the things I definitely try to tell people, know your norm for you.
Do you think that sometimes that can be a little easier said than done? Because, a lot of times we'll see somebody else and say, well, how come I'm not progressing like that person did? Or why do I get tired a lot faster than so-and-so did? And we start to think that we're not normal based on what somebody else is.
Right. And you know what? And it's everything. So we could, when you're looking at someone else, you're seeing that one thing, that one moment, but you don't know that that person for the past 6 months has been doing these things that led up to what you're seeing today. So you're just seeing that one slither of a moment, like, man, they're doing good. I got diabetes, they got diabetes, but why is he doing this? But mine's is this. But you don't know that, a year ago, he started changing his diet, or he's been adamant about doing this. They check, they do this, and where you may be just getting started. And it's like, you're not there yet. But if you get your schedule, do your exercise, change your diet, stick with it, you too can be at that point. So it's like, you don't pay attention to the backstory of how that person came to be to what you're seeing today. You just see the end result today, they are here, but you don't see all the work that the work and the struggle, whatever they did to get to that point. So, I try not to say, don't just pay attention to what you see. If you can, or if you want to have a conversation, say, hey, how did you get to be this way? And then let them tell you, man, it took me 2 years to get to this point. So that's the thing that we miss. We don't think to go back to see, wow, what was their journey to get here?
That makes a lot of sense. Yes.
What, after going through COVID, since you've been in the health care industry for 20 years, you said, I know a lot of COVID, people who were susceptible to COVID, some of it had to do with heart issues. And then some people who got the vaccine, especially in males, they showed a pattern of, it wasn't like a huge number, but it was a significant number of people who had heart issues as a result of the vaccine. So are you familiar with any of that?
So yes and no. And I'm just the technician. So I hear pieces of it, and then I see pieces of it. And one thing that I learned with COVID and watching when the heart patients come on my monitors, it's like the heart and the lungs kind of go hand in hand in how they function. And it's a lot of times, if the lungs is filled with fluid or whatever, it backs up into the heart, which makes the heart works harder than what it should be. So that's how it started affecting the heart. And even the same thing with the heart. If the heart gets backed up or the blood flow is not right, then it affects how the lungs function. And I know a lot of the patients that I was seeing coming on the monitors when it came to COVID, a lot of them was having fluid in their lungs. And when the patient would come on the monitor, the nurse, we get a snippet of report. The nurse will be like, there's fluids, and that's why they didn't want you to lay down. They want to kind of keep you set up because they don't want all that pressure in your chest and your lungs. So they want you to prop up. They don't want you to lay completely down with all the fluid in their lungs. So it was like a back and forth with that too. So I know we've seen a lot of people with just the fluid buildup in their lungs that was backflowing and affecting the heart. So we had to put them on the heart monitor. So it was just like that constant back and forth between the heart and lungs is what we were seeing a lot on the monitors.
Because I know with COVID, it was more considered to be more of a respiratory illness,
Right.
which is lung related, for the most part. But they do work hand in hand, because you can't be walking around without both of them.
Right.
You can't. And that's why one of the first questions they ask you when you go to get checked out for different things, especially something related to the lungs or the heart, they ask you if you were a smoker.
Yes.
Because smoking affects both of them in an adverse way. And it can be, even if you quit, it can be years later, where something happens. Because it's not, I know it's a habit that people tend to pick up as teenagers. And when you're a teenager, you think you're going to live forever. I mean, you don't really understand that you're not going to live forever. So you're not quite as careful. I never smoked, not because I knew that it wasn't healthy. It was because my parents I would have been grounded for months. Because neither of my parents smoked. So if you come home smelling like smoke, that was it. They would pick it up immediately. So I never smoked. I tried it once, and it wasn't even a real cigarette. And that was it. I was 12 and I got a used cigarette. I don't even think it even had any tobacco. And I tried it and I said, well, this isn't anything. What is the big deal? that was the only time I had a cigarette to my lips. Anyway, with the heart, one thing about it is when you are expecting, and they let you listen to your child's heartbeat, that heart is beating extremely fast.
It is. And it's really because it's just so small. When you see those baby itty bitty heartbeats, they're so tiny and they moving so fast because it's so small. So yes, those heartbeats is beating at 180 fast. Beats per minute.
And the average adult their heart rate is in the 60s or 70s and then.
Yep. From 60 to 100. Yep. It can range.
One other thing about the fast heartbeat is people were at one time people were taking them. Well, they're still taking them actually. A lot of the supplements for weight loss, and what they found was that their heartbeats were getting more rapid. And I remember years ago, I was taking it was one of those supplements, and I took it, but then I realized my heart was beating really quickly, and so I put it away, and I said, okay, I need to lay down and rest for a minute. I think that's a part of just being, of being knowing what your normal is. Right. Because I felt that my heart was beating a little too fast, and I slowed it down. And I think there were some other people who were actually dying from it and having heart attacks because they didn't maybe realize what their normal was, and their heart rates wound up being a lot faster than what was actually supposed to be normal for them.
Yeah, and that happens, and people don't realize with the heart also, it's chemicals too. It's like a chemical balance also. So, and the heart is, the potassium and the sodium, that also helps with the heart, contracting and relaxing and how it fires. And when you introduce those supplements, that's another chemical, you're introducing to, and people don't understand what the contraindications and how it can counter or affect your natural body's, chemical functions, and it'll cause all kind of disruptions and changes. And, it's just, we just don't know, and it's so much, and it's like, who can consume? It's just so much information. It's overwhelming. And it's like, and if you're not in the health, even if you are, or if you aren't in healthcare, it's still an overwhelming amount of information, and you just can't possibly know it all. Unfortunately, we just can't. And that's why I just say it's just best, if you can, to know you, like you said, know you. So when you do, if you're trying something new, you can immediately recognize a change inside your body. When you recognize that change, then, that can definitely help you.
Makes a lot of sense. Now, you're launching your book, and you're doing book launch events all throughout the summer.
Yes. Yes, I am.
And are they all in Raleigh?
Yes, right now they are all in Raleigh, but I will be in Texas. I will be in Houston, Texas in October. I am excited.
Okay.
I'm so excited. So, and cause I'm definitely trying to branch out and get out there. I had the wonderful experience of going to a conference in Atlanta, and I met a best-selling author, and, I'm kind of new to this. And I didn't really know kind of the process. And I was like, man, I sat with him, I talked with him, and I said, how do you become a best-selling author? And he's like, you got to get out there and do it. And I was like, well, I got this publisher, and he's like, you got to do it. And I said, what? I done wasted 2 years. I've been waiting on the publisher. I have a publisher and I haven't been doing nothing because I'm like, I got the publisher gonna market and advertise,
That was a valuable lesson that you learned. There are
it
so many
was.
people who want a
Mhm.
publisher because they think the publisher is going to do everything for them.
No.
And then they get a publicist thinking the publicist is going to do everything for them. And all they have to do is just sit there and rake in dollars.
Yeah, that's not,
Yeah, that's not how any of this works.
yes. I so learned it. And he looked at me, he said, you got a lot of work to do. I said, oh man.
Well,
But
that is true. A book needs to be marketed,
yeah,
and the author is the best representative of their book. Well,
yeah,
they should be anyway. They should be, passionate about whatever they've written about, and they should be able to explain it to people. You should have your elevator pitch. I don't know if they told you about this, but in 30 seconds, you should be able to tell somebody enough about your book, the highlights, the best parts, to get them interested in potentially buying it. So that's something else that authors have to learn. And on your first go round, kudos for getting out there, because some people never get out there with their book. They just kind of they think if I write it, they will come. Like if I build it, they will come.
right.
That's not the way any of this works.
No,
So one of the things that we do with the show is we expose people's books to the public, and we have authors who've written 100 books on the show, and authors who have their first book. It's a variety from all genres, all walks of life, from all over the country, and some outside the country. So,
wow, amazing.
but good for you to get out there and get started. And I know you said you're coming to Houston for the festival. You'll really love it because you get to meet people from all over who are just, the energy and the optimism and positive energy and spirit is throughout the event. So the networking is amazing, and you'll sell books too. You get to meet people from all different, like I said, people who've written tons of books and people who've only written one, like yourself. So you'll like it. So I had a question about when a person goes in for an appointment for their heart, they go see a cardiologist. What's something that they should potentially, I know you're not a cardiologist, but you work with the heart, maybe some potential things they should ask about or pay attention to?
Just have if they can, and educate themselves a little bit on the heart, like how the heart works, how it functions. And then just have some questions for their doctor to ask. And then if they don't know, they could just Google it, like, questions to ask a cardiologist or questions to ask a doctor if they don't know. And just, brush up on a little bit anatomy and physiology of the heart, and just, know what their own symptoms and feelings is, just, at least try to have at least 2 to 3 questions to ask your doctor. And then and sometimes you just don't know. You just know something's off, but you can't put words to it. And and that's fine too. And you can say just that because they have a million tests. A lot of patients will come in and they'll be like, I don't know what's wrong with me. Like I was, I do a bunch of little things and like doing stress testing, and that's where they put patients on a treadmill and they really overwork the heart to see, they stress the heart to see, what is its threshold, when does it give out? So they kind of have their numbers. And then so a patient, he didn't know anything. When he came in, he was like, I just felt weird and I came to get checked out. And he was like, I don't know what it is. And so they was like, cool, we got to test it out. We're going to give you this test, this test, this test. We're going to test you for everything and see what the numbers look like. And then they can kind of narrow down and pinpoint, And some of those tests are just to rule out, because, the main thing the cardiologist, they're worried, heart attacks and strokes, and they're worried about the death of the cardiac tissue. And a lot of those tests can tell them, okay, if your waveform is doing this, the ST segment is a good telltale sign of if someone's having a heart attack. And they know it. People have many heart attacks and they don't even feel it. But when you take that test and they get the EKG and the cardiologist see, whoa, that ST segment elevation, they're like, well, you're having a heart attack. And the patient, and it'll be happening right inside the doctor's office. They'll get the paperwork, they'll do the test, and they'd be like, are you feeling okay? And the patient will be like, yeah, I'm fine. They're like, yo, you're having a heart attack. Your numbers are showing us this. And they'd be like, well, I feel fine. So it's like, little things like that. And a lot of them, they'll catch it. They'll be able to catch it in the middle of, their appointment. And they'll say, okay, we're going to treat you. So, it'll help. So it's just, I don't know, one of those things. Some people, they just don't know until they actually go see if something feels off. They go see it, they'll do a test, and they'll be able to say, whoa, this is what we see. This is what's happening. So, and it's just different for everyone. So it's really hard. It's crazy. It's hard to pinpoint it.
One thing I like, I've heard kind of a recurring theme in this entire interview is asking questions. Often when we go to the doctor has maybe 10 patients that day and they're trying to get through them just like that. And if you don't ask any questions, they're not always going to offer any information. They're going to say, are you doing okay? And you're going to be like, yeah, I guess so. You have any questions? No, I guess I'm okay. And then they're gone.
Oh,
So
yes.
it's very important to have that list of questions. And if something doesn't feel right, ask.
Yes.
I mean, and I think that's something that we all do. And I think we as African Americans still have that distrust of doctors and of the medical industry. And we wind up hurting ourselves when we don't ask the right questions and we don't demand the care that we should have.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's
Or
true.
we just deal with things.
Yeah.
Sometimes and sometimes situations can become a new normal and you don't really realize it's a health challenge. And I'll give you my husband, for example. My husband was trying to get eye surgery for glaucoma. And so when he went to the primary doctor, his heart rate was in the 40s. And so the doctor referred him to a cardiologist. And the cardiologist said, are you passing out or having fainting spells or anything? And my husband wasn't having any of that.
And so he's like, no, I'm not, I'm good then.
He said most people heart rate in the 40s, they might pass out or, really be very sluggish. And so before he could get the eye surgery, he had to get a pacemaker put in to get his heart rate up to the 60s because the cardiologist wouldn't sign off on the surgery,
right? Because
the heart rate was so low. So, and you don't want to. He didn't have to be put under for the eye surgery, but it's still surgery.
Surgery, right? Yeah, and he could definitely he could just go out because it's already low, and you want to have that room. You want to have that wiggle room because just certain medicines, even if they give you numbing medicine, just depending on that person's body or whatever, you don't know how that body's going to react because everybody's anatomy will react different. So they could give, if his heart rate's already at 40, which is very low. If they give him a medicine, it'll drop to 0 quickly. And, the doctors, they don't want that to happen. And they want to cover the patient, protect the patient, protect themselves. They want to make sure that, any surgery, no matter how small or invasive or big, they want to make sure that, you're safe. So yeah, because they didn't want, he's already low, 40 is low. He's already low.
I think it was 45, but it was in the 40s.
Yeah, and you don't want it to get lower than that.
But it has a happy ending because he got the pacemaker. His heart rate's been in the 60s, mid 60s.
Wonderful.
And the pacemaker, they have it where it talks to a database or whatever. So if any misfires or anything happen, they can tell
can
you to
see.
come in. And this is some amazing technology out there.
Yeah.
That is dangerous for us to just live with things.
Yeah.
Being retired military, I've seen so many people, not just African Americans, but just people, period, who will deal with something because they don't want to take the time to get it done, or they deal with it because they don't trust the medical industry, or they deal with it because they think they can just tough through it. So it's good when we go in and ask questions. If something doesn't feel right, ask. Let the doctor tell you you're fine. Don't try to just take it upon yourself and say you're good.
Right.
And one thing I try to tell people too, get a second opinion. All just like we're all different, all the doctors and stuff are different. And if you see one doctor and if you don't like what they're saying, okay, go get you another one and keep going through them until you find one. Because especially now, there's been a huge increase in, minorities in the healthcare field, a lot more male nurses, and you just see it's grown so much. So now you really do have options. And just like you research, if you're going to buy a car, you research and you look up that car, look up your doctors, look them up, search them, look them up, see their background, where they went to school. You can look all of that up. You can look them up, look at their reviews. I do. I love I got a wonderful doctor. I love my doctor. And I sure did. Before I found her, I looked her up. I looked at the reviews of the practice. I paid attention to that. And bedside mannerism for me, it's important to me. Like you said, some of them doctors will rush you through. But one thing what I liked about my doctor when I read her reviews, people were, they were like, man, she really talked to me. Okay, that's what I need. I want you to take the time to really talk to me, hear me, work with me. So, look them up and you can change. You definitely, because some people think, oh, I'm assigned this doctor, I have to stay with this person. And I'm like, no, you can swap them out, go get a second
Yeah,
opinion
you can change doctors.
until you find, till you find that fit, and make sure it's the right fit and that, that doctor is really, you feel is really, for you and you're not just like a number. Because, you have those few dumb doctors, like you said, they're just numbers, 5 minutes, they in and out, next. So you just gotta, find the right one. And it's worth it. It is worth it.
Amen.
Well, LaToya, we are at the end of our interview time, and thank you so much for being a guest on the show. Show your book cover one last time, really quickly. And LaToya Cadlett her book is about the heart, cardiac rhythms, and she will also be at the National Black Book Festival. So thank you for being a guest. This has been an interesting conversation about the heart.
Yes, thank you. Have a good night. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome. Good night.
Congratulations.
Okay, well, we have our final guest coming on, and he is a celebrity chef.
Ooh, celebrity
but
chef.
He also, his book isn't about food.
I know it's about relationships. But you know what? Relationships are like food, and it's not all good for you.
Well, that's true for sure. His name is Ameer Natson, and he has a book called Relationship Cheat Code. And I had a completely different thought about what this book was about when I heard the title. And I'm sure I'm not by myself, because I thought the book was about how to cheat in a relationship or how to.
You think that, Gwen? You're just so negative.
I did. No, the title speaks. Or how to tell if your mate is cheating. That's what I thought. But anyway, but it's not about that. It's about building relationships with people. So,
Ameer, please tell us what your book is about.
Ameer, welcome to Black Authors Matter TV.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you all for having me.
Thank you for being here.
It's funny, and I'll share a little bit of my journey, which will really help us understand the book more. But this book has nothing to do with love, and it has nothing to do with relationship in the context of feelings or emotion outside of the fact that really becoming successful, winning in business. The subtitle of the book is Win in Business, Win in Building, and Win in Life. Okay. And so in the book, I really talk about, something that is very near and dear to me, as a as a young, successful entrepreneur, more often than not, I've been challenged with the plight of having to try to do business with people or establish contracts or build relationships with people that had absolutely no relational intelligence. So much so that I said I gotta write a book about this, because perhaps people think being a private chef to the Obamas or the Jay-Z and Beyonce and the Oprahs of the world is easy, right? Maybe good food is what gets you there, and that's not it. Maybe a good smile is what gets you there, and the truth is that's not it either. But really just understanding how to build relationships. And the truth is relationships are not transactional. They are emotional. They are built on frequencies, if you will. And so, as a successful, again, I say Black chef and entrepreneur, I said, man, I think I have the duty to really take people behind the curtain, to have a full glimpse of how Chef Ameer got here. How have I won so many awards and really, had so many opportunities to be in spaces that chefs who, for a long time, I felt like were more deserving of these opportunities. But I quickly discovered that they didn't know how to build relationships. And so, meeting someone at an event and then them inviting you to come into their home and cook, it requires some relation. It requires some trust. It requires, a certain level of comfort. And you can't build any of that without first building a relationship with somebody. So the book has nothing to do with love. To be honest with you, I care more about building relationships in business than I do about in love, because love fades.
Well,
So
love
this book
can
is-
fade.
yeah, but this book is about friendships. It's about business relationships.
You got
It's
it.
those types of transactional relationships.
You got it. You got it.
Now,
And love can
how
fade. You're
long
right,
have
Gwen. It doesn't have to fade.
yeah, love doesn't have to
Oh,
fade.
well,
But love can fade. And I agree with you about the building relationships in business.
yeah,
I think now a lot of times people they're looking for something quick
right.
and not something that's enduring.
Correct.
In terms of a business relationship, a lot of people are just trying to make quick money.
Yep.
And the way that you build a reputation
Yes.
is by being consistent and having integrity. And that takes years. That's not something that you can do. It's
That's
not
right.
a flash in the pan. And
That's
I
right.
say that as a longtime entrepreneur myself, not a chef, although I am a great cook, but I cook for
All
my
right now.
family. I cook for people I love, I care about. So
Yes.
I don't.
I'm a great cook too, but I don't always have time to do it. So I save mine for the holidays and maybe a couple times a week, and that's about it.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, and I love good food. And if I go to a restaurant and their food is not at least as good as mine, then why am I
Why did you
there?
have a restaurant?
Right.
Exactly.
Why am I spending my money? I
You
can cook
got it.
that. And so I would rather pay more and get a good meal than have something cheap. So how did you get into being a chef? Is this something that was a lifelong goal? Did you happen into it? How did you end up being a chef before you became a celebrity chef? Just how did you?
Yeah, interestingly enough, my mother would say, I have no idea how he became an award-winning chef because he never even boiled water growing up. And so I was not the kid who wanted a knife set for Christmas. I didn't want an apron. Interestingly enough, my father brought me a hot dog cart when I was 11 years old. And he said, I'm going to teach you how to be an entrepreneur. And I grew up in Newark, New Jersey, a very large, urban town in the Northeast, the largest city in New Jersey, actually. Really like a micro of the Harlem Renaissance. Newark had its own Harlemish vibe, if you will. And Black entrepreneurship was a really big thing, especially like in the Islamic and Christian community, in these urban communities. But so my introduction to entrepreneurship quickly led into me understanding problem solving. And so one of the things that would always grind my gears as a kid, we would go to the hot dog cart and they would put the chili and the cheese on the hot dog and, quickly wrap it in that saran cellophane paper. And all the cheese and the chili would be stuck on the top of the paper and the hot dog would be in the bun. And it was a problem, you know? So you kind of had to either eat the chili and cheese off the paper or, rip the hot dog in half and sop the sauce. It was problematic. So I figured out by the time I had my hot dog cart, I said, I don't want people to have the problem that I had. So the way that I would wrap my hot dogs, and really actually what I started doing was putting the chili and cheese on the bun and then putting the hot dog on top of the chili and cheese. And as a kid, it became a phenomenon. Another thing that I did, because where I grew up in New Jersey, again, is an equally divided population of both Islamic or Muslim, African American Muslim community. So I would have my aunt make halal chili. While I wasn't Muslim, our community was. So a lot of the people that ate halal food would come to the hot dog cart because they loved hot dogs, but they couldn't go eat the chili and cheese from JJ's hot dog cart, which, a Latin family owned. And as far as they were concerned, you can't make chili without putting some pork in it. So there was no compromise there. But anyway, from there, I fell in love with entrepreneurship. I fell in love with problem solving. I fell in love then with making a person's hot dog perfectly, and they keep coming back every day, or every Friday if the hot dog is their treat. So I understood building relationships even at 11 and 12 and 13. I didn't understand that's what it was. But what I did know was Mr. James comes and buys a hot dog from me every Friday. He goes to the check cashing place, cashes his check, and comes and buys 4 chili cheese hot dogs and a C&C grape soda. And so obviously I'd, done something. So from there, I went on, through life. I actually went to school for business and decided my freshman year at NYU Stern School of Business here in New York City that I was going to drop out of college and go to culinary school. And so I did that. My mother thought I was crazy. She cried. I don't know what I did wrong. My mother said, I don't know what I did so wrong. And I was like, Mom, I said, I'm going to make you the proudest mother alive.
You better have, because if not, you would have never heard the end of it.
I'm telling you, right? So my journey has really been incredible. I've earned 2 James Beard Awards. I've been nominated for Michelin's. But above that, I just, every now and again, and I don't know if you have these experiences, but I pause and I get a chance to have an outer body moment and see me and see where I am and where I got to and who I became. And I've had to question and ask myself at every turn, man, how did I do it? Because it wasn't, my food is incredible, but there are people whose food I would eat over mine any day, but they've never gotten the opportunities that I have. And so I'm so passionate about relationships. And there are a few incredible things I talk about in the book, but I'm so passionate about people understanding the cheat code. And the reason I call it a cheat code, when we were growing up, they had video games. And it was all about, who got to the furthest levels on the games. So the video game magazines used to release in the back pages of the magazine what was called a cheat code. So the cheat code would help you beat a level that was very hard to conquer. And so even though you had cheated your way to beat the level because you entered this code, you were able to say, I made it to level 12 on Sonic the Hedgehog or, Super Mario Brothers. And there was this credibility that you had. So when I titled the book, The Relationship Cheat Code, I put all of these gems and treasures in this book. And I said, I want to see people win in business. I want to see him win in building. I want to see him win in life. And so I'm in the book, I'm going to talk about how I connected with Matthew Knowles, Beyonce's father. And he said, my daughter needs a chef. And because of how I made him feel in that moment, he referred me to that opportunity. And it became, and I mean, I could tell stories for days. But that's been my journey, in the food and entrepreneurial space. And it's what ultimately, brought me to, led me to writing the book.
I love it. I mean, I've said it quite a few times on this show that people support people they like. So building relationships
You
is
got it.
important.
You
And
got it.
we've been seeing a lot on social media where people have been popularizing the toxic side of business. Somebody says, I don't like your service. Well, you don't have to buy it. I don't like your product. Well, you don't
Right.
have to be on my page. And we start to celebrate that.
Right.
And, I'm glad that there are books like this that are showing the real part of entrepreneurship, which is not toxic, which is about building relationships and making people want to like you. And for authors, this is something we need. When we going out and doing book signings, we have to kind of charm the people who come.
You have to be passionate about what you're doing.
Yes.
And now, Rhonda, I haven't seen those, whatever you said, because to me, that's just stupid. But if I saw it, I would quickly scroll so my algorithm wouldn't show me anymore. Because I
enjoy looking at different. I mean, for me, it's for this main reason why we're talking about it now.
Yeah.
Well, often I like to see that. I say the same thing about people who popularize going on vacation, even when their boss said that they can't have PTO.
Right.
Or the customer service people who pretend to be get smart with the people who are calling in. We all think it's funny, but like, these people gonna get y'all fired if you're trying to do that for real.
Right. Yeah, that's just stupid. But anyway, but I did want to, Ameer, you mentioned I did some work with Matthew Knowles. And because he's in Houston. I guess he's still here. But he was also a featured author at the book festival. And I'm trying to remember how I ended up doing work for him. But he asked me to do some work. I guess he saw some other things I was doing, and then he had something he needed done, and then he asked me to do it. So he's very particular. And if he refers you to somebody else, he means it, because he's very particular. And I
couldn't agree more.
He will make a move. If you don't perform, he will make a move, and he doesn't hesitate to make a move.
Yes. and here's the deal. That's just old school relationship stuff. It is. Right? Because if I give you an opportunity and you don't show up, I don't get to throw my hands up and go, oh, well, it worked for me. I've got to almost like come up against you, because I vouched for you. I used my credibility to say that you're valid or that what you do is worthy. So I don't expect you to go and give the person I'm referring you to, a lesser experience than you gave me. I want you to wow them like you wowed me. That's why I referred you.
This is why when somebody refers me to somebody, I want to do an even better job, because I know that this person's credibility is on the line.
There you go.
I don't think that they would refer somebody to me who's a dud. But then the second thing is, the person who got referred to me, I don't want them thinking that I'm a dud.
Yeah, listen, this is why I wrote this book. I mean, some of the greatest contracts that I've executed in my life didn't have a contract connected to them. We shook hands. We made a verbal commitment or agreement. We said, let's do business and see how things go. I had to write the book because I got frustrated with meeting people who would go, oh, I can build a house out of straw. And I go, okay, well, there's some straw and there's the land. And they go, and then they don't start building. And I go, what you waiting on? And they go, oh, I'm waiting to sign a contract. What you need a contract for? You said you. And so the culture of people wanting to be able to hold you to paying or compensating them for something that they honestly know they don't even really have the ability to do. So it's almost offensive when you tell me you're going to paint my house and I go buy the paint and the paint brushes. I bring you in my house, leave you in the house to go grocery shop while you paint the house. And I come in the house and you got paint all over the floors. What happened, man? And you like, well, the contract said I was going to paint, so pay me. Come on, sir. And you know, you watch him every day on Judge Greg Mathis. He'd be like, ma'am, are you? I was watching him the other day. He said, ma'am, that's a crackhead move. You charge the man to paint his house and don't know how to paint a house?
I don't watch him other than when I go to my hairstylist. She watches them. So I'm sitting there, I have to see it. But it is some funny stuff and some really ridiculous stuff. Some people fall out over stuff that y'all just wanted to be on TV because y'all could have worked this out. You know, this is not,
well, I wrote a whole book on, you know, the power of relationships. And one of my favorite chapters is the win-win. The win-win.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Yes. Because if both parties don't win, it's not a good arrangement.
Nope. But we live in this world where people are like, well, I got mine.
Yeah.
What you know.
But that's a short-sighted approach. And a lot of people now are looking for just something quick. They're not looking for long-term relationships and credibility. And I don't refer a lot of people to other people unless I know they're not going to make my name mud. You know, I because you know, it's my reputation on the line. If I refer you to someone or someone to you and you screw it up, not you, Ameer, a person.
That's right.
Then my name is on the line. And so I do very few referrals. I have to know the person. Work, I have to have seen it over time.
Absolutely.
A lot of times I have to have worked with them myself to make sure, because a lot of people, and I've learned this over many years in business. Yeah. And I don't say this lightly. Most people are not honest.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate. Now, some people are intentionally dishonest, like they just flat out lie. Some people are dishonest by not following through with what they said they were going to do.
Right.
You know, it may not be an aggressive, you know, dishonesty, but in the end, you didn't.
But I'm gonna say it was a lie. Whether you
okay.
I see how you fixing it up, but I talk about that in the book. Don't say you can do what you can't do.
I agree.
But if you come in the door and say, I don't know how to do it, but I'm a quick learner.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm blessed. I just had St. Thomas University in Miami, Florida, 2 weeks ago, named their School of Culinary Arts, Hospitality, and Tourism after me. And it is a very high honor. I'm very honored. I give God all the glory for it. But I spoke to a group of about 90 chefs that are about to graduate from their culinary matriculation in May. I'll be there at the graduation. I'm actually doing the commencement speech, another high honor. And they said to me, Chef Ameer, what tips can you give us? I said, find a place where you believe you belong. Don't talk about what they're going to pay you. Don't ask what they have to offer you. You walked into their establishment. That's the first thing they have to offer you. They have a cash register that's ringing in numbers. They've got people that are walking into their doors to eat their food. They have an established restaurant, the dream that you have. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't bad people out there that have businesses, and you may run into a dud, right? But I said to them, you know, walk into a space with your knife roll, with your knife bag, and ask to speak with the chef. Or if there isn't a chef, if the owner is the chef, and just say to him, I just graduated from culinary school. I'd love, because you've been in college for 4 years and you haven't gotten paid, you've sacrificed. So in order to find the place, to really find the place that's for you, I said, I dare you to spend the first 2 or 3 weeks after you graduate, finding the place where you belong by going into those spaces and proving who you are, what you bring, and what you can do. And let them ask you, how much do you want to get paid for this? and you go, I'm not here to talk about pay right now. And the first place you go to may let you work for 2 weeks and don't ask you how much you want to get paid, and won't ask you, can they give you a stipend, or can they give you a meal, or money to get home, or whatever the case may be. But don't let that stop you from finding your place, because you'll go out into the world and somebody will offer you $90,000 a year and it'll be a nightmare. It won't be consistent with what your dream is. It won't be a place that you really, and so I'm just trying to get them to understand the power of building relationships. Every business owner, at some point or another in our journey, our thinking becomes, who's my predecessor? Who's going to take over this business that I built? We don't want it to die when we die. And so who will carry on this baton? Who will carry the torch on? Walk into a space and prove that you have what it takes to be the person to take the baton, that you have what it takes to be the person to carry on that person's legacy, And they were so inspired by that, because they said, Chef, the truth is, we were looking to go everywhere and say, if you can't give me $40 an hour, I don't want to start.
I was
Yeah.
just about to say that. Unfortunately, we're right now in an age where people are coming right out of college and thinking that they have to be making $40 to $50 an hour.
Yeah,
And that's if they settle for an hourly wage.
exactly. Right.
And I remember reading Charlemagne the God's first book. I believe was it Black Privilege? I think it was Black Privilege.
Yes.
But he talked about how he first started working with Wendy Williams, and he was actually working for free, but that set him up for having his own show later, and he was in demand later. But I think often we see working for free or working for not as much money as we would like as being used. And it winds up being another popular theme on social media, that we have to be making a certain amount of money. So what do you say to people who say, well, that sounds good and that might have been good back then, but I have to be paid. I need to be paid what I'm worth. I know my worth. Is
that a question for me?
I have
that's another
seen
popular slogan.
that nonsense, Rhonda. I have seen that nonsense. And I tell people, you get paid for your, well, they'll put, I need this and this because for an apartment, I got a car, I got this. I said, people pay you based on your skills, not your bills, not your bills. A person's not paying you based on the bills you've made. That's not how this works.
That's what they say.
Before we go, because we almost at the end of our show, I wanted to know, one, what is your signature dish as a chef?
Oh, so, okay. All right. Okay. This one, how much time do we have? Because we
got about 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Okay. So a chef doesn't have a signature dish. A cook does.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for making that.
No, I got you. This is good.
Okay.
A true chef is an artist.
Okay.
And so while I may have the ability to make a dish that I have made before the same, every dish that I make is an interpretation of either a way that I'm feeling or a dish that I have had and really enjoyed and want to replicate or emulate that experience and translate it to someone else. And so people often ask chef that question, what's your number one dish?
Okay.
And for a long time, I used to say, oh, well, my white truffle, Gruyere Gouda mac and cheese, and, my fried chicken is succulent and it's, and for years I had to, think about that and go, I don't have a dish. There are times that I do an African event, and Yoruba African people who eat moi moi every day, eat my moi moi and go, you are from the Yoruba tribe, or I make a Caribbean dish and they go, what part of the Caribbean? Or a Peruvian dish or a Mexican dish, so the truth, a chef, isn't which is, being a chef is the highest form of culinary art. And as an artist, my signature, so I'll tell you what James Beard would say I'm famous for, and that would be creating or cooking food that is authentic to its origin. So if I cook Italian, more often than not, people are going, all right, bring the little Italian ladies from behind the counter because ain't no way you made this gnocchi by hand right here in front of me. It's where the dwarfs at. Bring out the, ain't no way this bolognese sauce tastes like this. And I'm Italian. I grew up in Sicily. So my signature would really just be, my broad palate and, just love for different foods and cultures, and being able to represent that in my interpretation of a dish.
Okay, I wish we had more time, but we're at the end of our show. Show your
Yeah.
book again.
The
It's the
relationship cheat code.
relationship sheet. It's upside down.
I got
Relationship
it.
cheat code.
Yes, it's available. It's on Barnes and Nobles. It's on
Okay.
Amazon. You can find it everywhere that books are sold.
Okay.
It really has done incredibly well. And it's just, it's a gift from my heart. This is my treasure chest. And a lot of the principles in this book I used to get where I am. And so I felt responsible to have to share it with everybody else, so that they too could understand the power of relationships, and how relationships are what you need to win in business and win in building and ultimately win in life.
Okay. Well, Ameer, thank you so much for being a guest on Black Authors Matter.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you all.
Continue
Really enjoyed the
success.
interview.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed you all as well. Be blessed.
Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Well, everybody, that's the end of our show for this week. And we will be back next Tuesday with another amazing episode of Black Authors Matter TV. I'm Gwen Richardson signing off.
And I'm Dr. Rhonda Lawson. Have a wonderful evening and a great week.
Thank you for tuning in and join us next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern for another edition of Black Authors Matter TV.